Hi, I'm Jim Knotts, President and CEO of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Welcome to today's virtual reading of the names. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. As part of our commemoration, we'll host an in-person reading of the names at the wall from November 7th through 10th, 2022, when all 58,281 names on the wall will be read aloud. In the lead up to that event, we'll be reading names each day online while sharing the photos of these heroes. For our daily virtual reading, the names of the service members will be read by month and day of death between the years 1956 and 1975 in alphabetical order for the given day. We apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. Know that our readers are doing their best to honor these service members. We hope you'll listen and watch each day and share with others as we remember and honor those who gave their lives during the Vietnam War.
Arthur Carl Alterwisher, Glendon Lee Ammon, Wilfredo Balago Andrada, Victor Patrick Andreozzi, Frank Aree Jr., Charles Leon Atkinson, LeGrant Badgett, Robert Stanley Baird, William J. Balfour, Jed Colby Barker, Douglas Ken Barron, Dennis Lee Bartlebaugh, James Reginald Botter, Charles Hawkins Beer, Marvin Vincent Bell, Randall Bruce Bernard, Vincent Bernard, William McKinley Berry, William Aaron Berry, Grover Bowen, John Bowen Jr., Dudley Francis Bradbury, Adrian Coogie Brittle Jr., Connell Joseph Byrne Jr., Blaine Edward Callahan, Roger William Carroll Jr., Gregorio Pedro Castillo, Charles Mike Castillo, Douglas James Cavan, Alan Bruce Cecil, Francis Charles, David Leroy Clark, Raymond Clay, Troy Wesley Cockley, Ted D. Cohoon, James P. Concannon Jr., Robert Frank Conley, Dwight William Cook, Joseph Anthony Coombs, Jerry K. Covey, Jimmy Douglas Curry, Edward Lynn Daubert, Clifton Anthony Davis, Carl Andrew Dean, Terry Lee Dean, Larry Wayne Dennis, Charles Edward Denny, Benjamin Victor Doman, Thomas Frederick Durbin, Ronald William Amy, Stephen Vernon Elting, Arthur Diaz Esqueda, Harold Eugene Fiesel, Manuel Fortunato Fernandez, Gerald Francis Filippi, Earl Eugene Ford, Joe Elbert Foster, Jr., Glenn Wilcox Foster, Jr., Davitt John Franks, John Oliver Freeman, Joseph Augustus Friel, David Frank Garrett, Lawrence E. Guerin, Jr., Charles Mitchell Goff,
Robert William Grebbe, Willie Green, Carlton Griffin, Edward James Gwynn, Merle William Haben, Richard Allen Hamblin, Michael Irvin Hanneman, John Lee Harris, Jr., Larry Cecil Hathcock, Greg William Heydrich, George Bernard Hess, David Lee Hicks, Lewis Clark Hines, William Jesse Hodges Sr., Brent Arthur Holt, Norman Leroy Hoyt, Robert Lee Hyde, Robert Buford Jackson, James Wesley Jackson Jr., Nathaniel Jackson Jr., Toby Edward Jacobs, Richard Allen Janigian, Vernell Jenkins, Timothy Paul Jennings, Thomas Story Jester, Theodore Johnson, John William Jolly Jr., Mark Warren Judge, Thomas Joseph Kane, John Henry Kavulik, Albert Arthur Kodrowski Jr., Anthony Constant Kirkwood, William James Kildare, Thomas Patrick Kent, Ronald Reed King, John Earl Klett, George Eugene Lalande, Thomas Lloyd Larson, David Rudolph Latch, Billy Lane Laufer, Stanley Garfield Lawson, Thomas Allen Likelighter, Stanley Robert Lewandowski, Robert Allen Loda, Charles Edward Lofton, Stephen Robert Major, Felix Malone, Carl William Mann, Terry Timothy G. Maxim, John Albert McGehee, Raymond P. Miller II, James Burton Mills, Thomas Allen Mitchell, Kenneth Michael Montone, John Otis Moore, Robert Stephen Mueller, Daniel Eugene Nelson Jr., Michael Dean Neistel, Luis Ortiz Corredor, Howard Owens, Michael Jerome Pacheco, Michael Ransom Page, James Lloyd Pettiford, Anthony Bruce Phillips,
William George Pilcher, Kenneth Leo Plumador, Morel Joe Pope, Gary Donald Price, Leverett Roscoe Prosky, Ronald Leroy Reel, Tiago Reese, Donald Juan Richards, Nestor Ju Rivera Trinidad, Michael Allen Roberts, Charles Waddell Roberts, Juan Armando Rodriguez, Lane Joseph Romagosa, Robert Clarence Roper, Nels Vern Rosenlund II, Frank Bart Sanders, Walter Sauer Jr., Gary Ray Schaefer, Martin Frank Schwick Jr., John Francis Sewell Jr., Clarence David Shebley, Leonel Mendicona Silveira, Larry Rickford Skinner, Leonard F. Skonecki Jr., David Willard Smith, Stephen Thomas Smith, Reginald Edward Smith, Merlin Clarence Stepflug, Donnie Ray Stewart, Henry Matt Stewart Jr., Ronald Robert Strawshine, Thomas Francis Sudleski, Richard Eugene Sutherland, William Elling Swensgaard, Harold Dean Tatum, Kenna Clyde Taylor, William Linwood Taylor, Donald Lee Templeton, Thermal Thompson, Willis Albert Toombs, Thomas William Truelove, James Edward Trushaw, William Hardy Upchurch Jr., Ronald Fran Van Raemdonk, Milton James Vasilius Jr., James Leo Warner, Edward Alfred Wellings, William Charles Wenzel, David Lee White, David George Williams, Richard Edward Wingate, Willard Paul Woods,